Hey everybody, welcome to Stream Coco! How's everybody doing on this fine Monday? I guess it's afternoon, it's 12:03. We are incredibly excited. This week we have Richard Garriott, who is, I was just saying before we started, the closest person to a real-life Tony Stark that I think exists. He's an entrepreneur, you know him, he created the Ultima series. He's been to space, he's been to the International Space Station. He's been to Antarctica. He's been to the Titanic. He's literally done every single possible thing you can. And I'm going to try to stab him later. He might be immortal. He might be a Highlander. I don't know. We don't know.
Might be.
There could be only one.
In my games, people spend a lot of time trying to kill me. So
that's true.
I work very hard to become immortal.
People try to take down Lord British, exactly. And today we're going to play a little bit of Gauntlet, which is, we were just reminiscing about, you used to own
the coin op. Well, I not only spent, in the very beginnings of my career, I spent hundreds and probably thousands of dollars playing the coin op.
Yes.
Owned a coin op.
Yes.
Eventually retired all my coin ops because they were, I had to store them in a barn and they just got dust in them, and I was just...
You had acres of coin ops.
Just coin ops of collecting dust. But I'm a huge Gauntlet fan. Haven't played this version in a while, so we're going to see how it goes.
It's great. Very easy and fun. I will say, I'm a Valkyrie fan. Because she's a badass.
Oh, I'm going to play the elf.
There we go.
My favorite line was, "Elf needs food badly."
right, exactly. I got that a lot as well. All right, here we go. How's everybody doing? Conan's my hero. Good to see you. Aaron Burton, what's up? That's right, exactly. Yes, Richard Garriott. That's right, Chainsaw Gothic. We have also, so let's just briefly talk about your humble beginnings. So I read a thing where you actually programmed in high school something like 28 games?
That's true, yeah. In fact,
that's unbelievable.
Back when games were way more primitive than this,
yes.
Back in the old 8, well, even before 8-bit, even before the Apple II, I was programming on a teletype that had nothing but character graphics on paper.
That's insane.
And with those character graphics on paper, I would create these little role-playing games, and then when the Apple II finally came out, I'd start building little 3D environments with black and white line drawing, no polygons, no colored textures, nothing like this. But even in those earliest days, the number of people making them was me and 6 or 8 other people, it seems like.
That is unbelievable.
And so it was pretty easy going at the very beginning.
Yes, that's true.
There was more demand than there were makers.
And what kind of attracted you in the very beginning to doing it? I mean, no one was doing this. What made you think I want to create a game? I want to do this.
Oh yeah, no, it was really there weren't other computer games really around at the time, much of any. There were some text games like the original adventure game or Zork.
Zork. Oh my God, I played so much Zork.
And but then I was playing Dungeons and Dragons when it first came out. Literally first came out. I became friends of Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson when after they made that, and but that let us. I just kind of made the thing that felt natural based upon the love of Lord of the Rings and D&D. And
it kind of was a natural extension. It was kind of like, I guess, one of those things where, if you love a book, then you want to write that kind of book, that kind of thing.
Exactly right.
That's unbelievable.
And so I was just combining all the things I was enjoying. The early computers, the early games like D&D, fiction like Lord of the Rings. So that was just, it all coalesced into computer games. And
then when Ultima started to take off, and you found yourself on the other side of the mirror, like inspiring other people to make video games and to get into that. That had to be pretty surreal.
It is, but what's interesting about that is, for a long time you don't really know that that's happening. I mean, even while it's happening, this goes way before the internet.
Yes, that's true.
And I wasn't my own first publisher, so if anybody even made a comment to the publisher, it didn't go to me.
Right.
For 5 or 10 years.
But you had no idea.
I had no idea. I just know it sold well because I get a royalty check. Right. But you don't really understand what people think about it.
That's true.
Until I had already been doing it for about a decade.
Right.
And after that, you begin to get fan mail. And what's interesting about fan mail to this day, I don't know. You might tell me if this matches what you guys get.
Yes, we're getting instantaneous fan mail.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It's much quicker now. It's much easier now for both the trolls and the fans.
That's true. That's true.
But back in my day, the letters that I have that I kept all say things like, one paragraph of, "Hey, I think your games are really great," and then it's pages of, "Here's what you did wrong," or "Let me tell you how what you should have done
Sure, exactly.
to actually make this a good game." And also how much fun people have killing your character.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. People want to take down they go to the top of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
There. Exactly. They always run for the throne. Now, what are you? Do you still? Do you have time to? You're doing so much other things. Do you still have time to play other video games?
Oh yeah, I'm still. In fact, I would say I'm more of a gamer the last 5 years than I was the previous.
Wow,
10
interesting.
Years.
Is there anything that you're liking these days that you think people should check out?
What's interesting is I tend to make big, complex role-playing games.
Yes.
But I tend to play lighter, mobile kind of games.
Interesting.
Kind of tower defense games.
Yeah.
Like a few years ago, Plants vs. Zombies was my #1 game by far.
Wow, awesome. I believe that though, because it's kind of like as a rock musician, you don't really want to listen to the music you're making. You want to listen to other. You're influenced by other stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, I think I find my best inspiration from people who are doing things that aren't role-playing games.
Sure, absolutely. Also, for people who don't know, he coined the term MMORG, by the way.
That's right.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And also
that's
the
crazy.
term Avatar, which is obviously pretty common now.
Yeah, I would say so.
I
Yes.
coined that term as well.
That's right. Have you read the book Ready Player One?
Of course.
Oh yeah, of course.
In fact, I got I was just getting ready for my space flight when Ernest Cline wrote that book.
That's an amazing sentence, by the way. I was just getting ready for my.
He actually sent a message to me to write an intro for it, but I was too busy to with my other activities at that moment.
For your space flight. Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you only the second person ever, I believe, to wear the British flag in space.
That's true.
Your father, astronaut.
That's true too.
By the way, great mustache. I saw a picture on Wikipedia.
His handlebar mustache.
Yes, if you look up Owen Garriott on Wikipedia, amazing mustache. Very envious. Do I have to revive you here? What can I do?
I don't know. I'm trying to mutton pat. Uh-oh.
How do I bring you back?
I don't know, but I came back a minute ago, but I've now died twice. So
there's a little over scanning going on the TV. Wait, how do I get back there? Oh, there you go.
There you go. Got it.
Yeah. So tell us about that. I have so many questions. First of all, obviously, okay, you decide you're going to go into space.
Well, I decided that at a young age. So what's important to know about that is, it would be reasonable to assume that because my dad was an astronaut, that's why I decided I want to be an astronaut.
Sure, I would think that. Yeah.
But I don't really think that's quite true, or at least it's no more true for me than it probably was for most kids who grew up thinking I want to be a dinosaur hunter or an astronaut or a policeman or fireman. But when you grow up with a
or Sasquatch hunter, perhaps
these days.
Sasquatch these days.
But what happened for me is when I was about 13 years old, one of the NASA doctors, was giving me an eye test and noticed that I was going to have glasses, and he said, I hate to break it to you, Richard, but you are no longer eligible to be an astronaut.
Whoa, is that true?
And
so I can't be an astronaut. I have glasses.
Well, now you can. I'll tell you why.
Now we're talking. You're giving me hope.
I'm giving me hope. Continue to have hope because. But at that time, it was like being kicked out of the club that your parents and all your neighbors were members of. So I was like distraught. And I said, well, who is the doctor to be the gatekeeper of space? If I can't go by NASA rules, I'm gonna make my own freaking rules.
It's like the movie Gattaca. You're not gonna be.
Exactly it.
Yeah, you're not gonna be limits.
When I watch Gattaca, I'm going like, that's me.
Yes, that's you.
That's me.
That's
I would have done all the same thing.
I love it. So then the challenge. It was like it's if you ever want me to do something, tell me I can't do it. It was one of those.
Right,
things.
exactly right. Right. That's exactly it. That's exactly what happened. Right. And at the age of 13, you don't really do much.
right. Your hands are a little.
But
tied.
as soon as I started making money in video games, then I began to do something about it.
Yes.
And so almost all the investing I did by myself, meaning not with a financial planner.
Yes.
But anything I did myself, I began to invest in opening space. So a week ago.
Right. Exactly. And I believe you're a trustee of the X Prize.
That's right. One of the original
that's right.
participants.
And co-founder of Zero G, which I almost did, which is unbelievable.
Well, you need to go do it.
Oh my God!
I highly
Absolutely.
recommend it.
Absolutely.
Let's see if I can get myself brought back.
And Zero G, just so for people to know, it's the plane that goes on a parabolic arc, so then you experience weightlessness.
Yeah, in fact, that weightlessness is the same as being in space.
That's crazy.
I mean, it really is, because
crazy.
Even the space station is falling towards the Earth. It's just missing.
Right, exactly.
Because it's going 17,000 miles an hour.
That's true.
But the sensation you get is identical.
That's insane. I love it. And you actually, again, one of your many accomplishments, you, I think, performed the first wedding. You officiated the first wedding in Zero G?
In Zero Gravity. That's true,
unbelievable.
So I'm an ordained minister. I have my credentials in my pocket.
How did that
in case somebody needs to be married?
Me and Beth, perhaps. No. how did that go? I mean, how did it actually go with people floating around? Did they hold hands?
It's tricky because
logistics.
Well, when you're floating, we had fun by purposely doing parts of it on the ceiling, parts of it on the floor.
Sure, yes.
But you also have to break it up into 30-second parabolas.
Right.
So we'd do you take this lovely woman, wife? And then you're slammed on the floor for at 2 Gs. And then, do you take this man? And so it's.
We're gonna try a different map here. Let's try a little something where we can hack and slash. That is. I'm gonna also switch my guy here. Who should I be? I'm going. Let's go warrior. Classic. Look at that. He can't. He can't tie his shoes. He can't get past his belt there.
His giant skull on his belt buckle.
Yeah. He's got really. That is unbelievable. That's so fun. My God. Well, okay. So then. Okay, you get some success, you get a little bit of money, and then you decide I'm going to go into space.
Yeah, and of course, getting into space is not easy.
Right. What's the first phone call?
Well, the first attempts to get into space were helping NASA folks who were retiring from NASA, who were frustrated they couldn't convince the government to do it their way, and who then came to me and said, "Hey, how'd you like to sponsor my crazy scheme to get into space?"
Interesting.
And I was going yeah, well, I have a shared vision, so let's do it.
That's cool. That's great.
The problem is those people have had no prayer of doing it.
Right.
Because they were all, test pilots or super scientists, but they weren't entrepreneurs.
Right. They didn't have the other skills.
They didn't have the other skills.
Yeah.
And so the first 10 years of attempts were pretty much
10 years, my God.
And lost a lot of money backing a lot of crazy ideas. But then I found the folks like Peter Diamandis, who's the key founder of the X Prize, and a guy named Eric Anderson, who helped me kick off Zero G and Space Adventures, and a whole list of others. And that's really how it began to open up when we began to build this sequence of more entrepreneurial activities.
That's so cool. And then so you guys kind of get together and how do you, because it seems to me it crosses so many different, I mean, you need to have money, you need to have resources. You have to get
permission from governments.
Right, you can't just shoot something up
with governments.
Yes, that's crazy.
For a small, broke team of 5.
Yes.
It's pretty hard to negotiate with governments. But we did, and it still took another 10 years almost, but it did eventually work.
Right.
But then it gets worse after that because. Just because you built a company that can take people to space, just because you found a price and you can actually pay the price, doesn't mean they'll let you go.
Really?
Because you still have to pass medical qualification. And remember the thing with the eyes?
Yes.
Okay, so I fortunately the Russians didn't care as much about my eyes.
Right.
And the fact that I'd had laser corrective eye surgery in the meantime actually became a fascination for NASA.
Really?
And so because they had actually wanted to approve that for astronauts, but they had never had a test case.
Whoa!
And so suddenly I became the test case.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And so it actually became a benefit.
Yeah, they're like, go up and see how that goes.
But
see if you're gonna go blind.
But then during the medical tests, they discovered that I was missing a vein in my liver.
So I read this. You might, if there was a depressurization, you might bleed out.
Right.
That's crazy.
Which means you can't go.
Which means oh my gosh.
So after paying,
you're just like, let me bleed out. I'll die in space.
After paying most of the money I'd earned through 30 years making games to Russia, I get a phone call saying you can't go. And by the way, you're not getting your money back. Okay.
Did they tell you it was a non-refundable deposit?
I knew that ahead of time.
I
knew that ahead of time.
That's unfair.
And so, but then you're just going like, how could this possibly be happening?
How could this possibly be happening?
But then I got another call just a couple hours later saying, okay, we have a plan, and the plan is, day after tomorrow, you have to go into the hospital, and they're going to remove a big lobe of your liver.
The day after tomorrow, they're just like, by the way, Thursday, you're going to go in and get your liver.
Life-threatening surgery.
Jeez.
And when I went and talked to the doctor said, you just should not go to space. This is, I can't advise a healthy person to do this to themselves.
I mean, it's extremely dangerous.
You live out your life happily here on Earth, but if you really insist that,
X.
And
it's like one of those Matrix jumps.
Oh yeah. And but he said, if it's a professional requirement, which I said, of course it is. I'll do it for you. So therefore I had my.
That is just.
And I've got a scar now, from my sternum to my belly button over to the side of my body now.
I would imagine it's a pretty serious.
It's a very serious scar.
Or it's like the liver is one of the major organs in your body.
Yeah, they had to pull back all my ab muscles and everything to get in there. So
Good God, man! Just like Bender, they just like in Futurama just open you up.
And the recovery was lengthy.
Unbelievable. By the way, you guys can read all about this in Richard's book, Explore Create, which is out now. It's fantastic. By the way, I love like just reading the blurbs on the back. Elon Musk, Ernest Cline, who wrote Ready Player One, Stephen Hawking, who we'll talk about in a second, Steve Wozniak, like unbelievable. Yeah. That's a pretty
even if you don't like the book, just the quotes on the back.
The quotes on the back are unbelievable. And you arranged for Stephen Hawking's first trip into weightlessness.
That's right, and he wants to go to space, and I think he'll make it. So,
oh my gosh, that would be unbelievable.
He'll probably take a suborbital trip, here soon. Virgin Galactic has already offered him a free trip.
That's
and
so
they should
great.
be flying here soon. So,
I think we got to go across with using that triangle. I think if you press triangle,
to jump
over
over this.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong.
I think it didn't work very well.
Oh, you just run across.
Just made it though.
The veteran over here knows what he's doing. That's great. So then you go through some kind of training.
Yeah, so I lived in Russia for the better part of 2 years.
And how was that? How was living in Russia?
Хорошо. Русский язык это очень трудный.
It didn't affect. I see. You didn't pick up any Russian or affect you at all.
Yeah, well, I mean that's about the only thing I can still say in Russia is the Russian language is very difficult. And but all the manuals for the operations of the vehicle are in Russian. All the commands and mission control are in Russian.
My God.
All the instruments in the vehicle are in Russian. So you
like
have
in
to
Gravity
learn
with Sandra Bullock.
No, in fact, actually, the Sandra Bullock stuff in Gravity was incredibly accurate.
Really?
For those parts of it.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, in fact, I was shocked at what a good job they'd done with those details.
Well, there you go. Nice job, Sandy. Good job. And who directed that? Who directed that, Beth? Do you know? I'm trying to think. Gravity.
Is that Alfonso?
Alfonso Cuarón? Yeah, I think so. That's unbelievable. So then So I love the fact, like, the stakes are pretty high. Like, I need to learn Russian so then I know what buttons are going to do what in case
right.
there's
Well,
a problem.
and also if you think about that, we went up on this vehicle called a Soyuz, and there is no passenger seat on these space vehicles. The shuttle actually has a mid-deck where the scientists sit, and there's literally nothing to do.
Oh, wow.
While you're going up and down.
I didn't know that.
But on the Soyuz, there's only 3 people in it, and all 3 have critical jobs they better do, or you don't survive the trip.
It's not like a minivan where you can just...
Exactly. So, for example, I'm the first person to get in. The vehicle, the capsule is turned off and cold at the time that I enter. I actually literally turn it on.
Holy!
Manage all the power as it distributes through all of the. Oops! That was me.
Yeah.
That wasn't it. And
so you're firing up the Soyuz rocket.
Yeah, and I manage all the life support for my crewmates and myself.
What?
All the oxygen flow.
Are you nervous at all? I'm nervous hearing this story.
No, you've done it so many times.
I see. So it's kind of like it's muscle memory.
Muscle memory.
But I mean, man, and
you're on the radio with people who your trainers are still on the radio with you. And
I don't know. I could screw anything up. I could literally screw anything up. I'm not sure. Yeah. That's crazy. The James Bond movies were the only reason I wanted to learn Russian.
Yeah.
I feel like Richard, you easily could be an international spy at this point.
Maybe I am.
Yeah, you could travel the world offering your services to the highest bidder. You know how to fly a rocket.
A rocket.
Literally a rocket.
Yep.
You know how to program computers.
Yep.
Exactly. You know how to. You can do it all. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my favorite little taglines that has once been said about me is Maxim Magazine called me one of the 6 most interesting men in the world you can actually meet.
That's true. Yes, that's absolutely true.
Along with people like the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, right.
And a few others. So,
yeah, I mean,
cool.
I would
that's
say
pretty good company.
I would say that is 100% correct. I mean, unbelievable. So then, all right. So I have a question. What does space smell like? What does it smell like?
It's interesting because technically the vacuum of space, by definition, couldn't actually have a smell.
Right.
And but of course you're locked up in this tin can that has been recycling its air for decades.
Sure.
And so it's reasonable to assume that it can get pretty smelly.
Right.
It actually doesn't have much of a smell. Even the space station, which does have sections of it that are frankly kind of moldy.
Crazy.
Because there's no sinks or bathrooms or toilets or
sure, right.
There's a thing you would consider a toilet, but I mean there's no running water really anywhere. And so when you brush your teeth or use a baby wipe to clean yourself with, spittle and little droplets of water kind of get scattered all over the walls.
That's
and it
great.
tends
Just
to
like
grow a
my
little bit of
apartment.
mold.
Just like my
Yeah,
apartment.
exactly.
There you go.
Exactly.
I see. So the little droplets just kind of end up in the crevices and stuff.
Exactly right. And so where
Wow,
the area of
man.
the space station that they use for personal hygiene, they kind of move it around so that you don't keep the same area constantly damp.
Whoa.
And you can kind of see the places that have been recently used because they're a little greener and a little moldier than
That's-
the older ones, which are kind of dry and brown.
That is fascinating. Wow. That's something I never would have thought. That's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Nor would I.
Yeah,
Back
I mean
there.
that's great. Good lord. Were you and how did it feel up there? Was it claustrophobic? Like, is there anything like that on Earth that you've experienced?
Well,
that
so-
kind of feeling.
Well, the space station itself is huge. It's bigger than a football field. So
Right.
I mean, once you're up there, it's like dozens of buses parked in head to tail with hatches between them.
Yeah.
And so there's lots and lots. There's only 6 of you up there, and there's at least 12 of these modules. So you can get lost and be away from anyone else for the whole day.
Wow,
once
that's
you're on the
crazy.
space station.
Oh my gosh.
But on the other hand, the Soyuz, is extremely compact.
Sure.
And so if you were at all claustrophobic, you wouldn't like it.
Wow.
In fact, here as a little demonstration,
Yes, yes.
if you and I were in the Soyuz,
Uh-huh.
we would be sitting with your heels literally touching your butt.
Oh
We would be literally shoulder to shoulder. Your knees would be strapped in. And by the way, if I was in the commander seat, there'd be a third person here, and I could touch both outer windows. The control panel is touching our knees. The hatch is right here above us. And you might think that we could have a conversation here,
Yeah.
except all the safety gear is packed between us. You actually have a hard time even seeing each other.
Gosh.
And so, in theory, maybe you could put another small person laying across our laps.
Beth can sit here.
But that's about it. That's it.
That is
you're just packed.
unbelievable. Oh my god.
And so
it really is like a tin can with a giant rocket strapped to it. I mean, you're just
well, like 95% of the mass is kerosene and liquid oxygen. And and in fact, even the one thing you're not prepared for is you're getting ready to kind of board this thing for the first time.
Yeah.
So you've been through the simulators, over and over and over again. So you're confident in the operations.
Sure.
But the first time, your first time in space is sort of the first time ever you walk up to a fully fueled rocket. And when it's full of liquid oxygen, which is, very cold, cryogenic, there's not only frost on the outside of this thing, but any air coming near it is condensing into fog, which is streaming down the sides of it. And it's like popping and cracking and groaning as it kind of expands and contracts. And
Yeah.
and you just walk up to it, and it's like, it's alive.
That's so
and,
cool.
and it's the biggest bomb you can possibly imagine. I mean, if something goes wrong when you're standing here, it's going to take out, a quarter mile in every direction. And,
wow.
So yeah,
man,
it's impressive.
That is just unbelievable. And how was so you're talking about? That's really interesting. That I guess I didn't know that the International Space Station was the size of a football field, but I just didn't think there was that much free space in there to move around. That's extremely cool. And
yeah.
I mean, God, and so how was? So you're up there for a while. You're up there for, I believe, 8 days, 12 days.
12 days.
12 days.
So that's a lot of time to get a chance to float around like Superman all day and all night, which is great fun.
And I believe that you did some experiments while you were up there for school children. Is that correct?
I did. I did a ton of experiments. I did commercial experiments to try to make money to offset the terrible cost of going.
Yeah.
And to pay for future flights.
Of course.
I did a lot of volunteer science, mostly medical research, like my eyes.
That's cool.
And
what is like what's a typical experiment? What is one thing that you kind of did up there?
Okay, so it's my favorite is slightly complicated, but I think people will get it.
Mm-hmm.
It was something called protein crystal growth. If you're
Sure.
if you're a drug maker and you want to make drugs for people to take to fight a disease, the pill you swallow and hopefully goes into your bloodstream, you want it to be a chemical that will bond strongly with the disease molecules.
Sure, you want it to be able to take down the disease.
Right, so they need to kind of match up physically to each other. And so one of the best ways to start that process is to know the exact shape of the molecule that's causing the disease.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
And to get the shape of the molecule, one of the ways you do that is you make a crystal of it, so they all line up, and then use something called X-ray diffraction to look at it. But if you grow crystals on Earth, in gravity, the phase change from liquid to solid creates impurities in the crystal.
Sure.
But if you grow them in space, there's no convection currents, and so
there's no forces acting on
no
them.
forces acting
so
on
it.
So they can be bigger and more pure.
Wow.
And so
man.
it should be able to cut time and money off of the development of medication.
That is fantastic.
And so that's one of the things I was doing in space.
Or if you're Walter White, you could really make some great meth.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So make some really pure blue sky meth up there.
Probably could. Yeah.
Right, exactly. That is just unbelievable, and also like very interesting, like because of course like you are one of however an extremely small number of people ever to go into space, and so you want to maximize your time up there.
Right. So I was specifically the 483rd person to leave the Earth.
Wow!
Not that I was counting or anything.
Wow, that's crazy!
But,
my goodness!
Yeah, my dad was like number 35.
Oh my god! That's so cool. And your dad was there when you shot up into.
He was there with the rocket when I loaded it. He ran my mission control team on the ground.
Wow,
he was,
cool.
At the rescue helicopters picking me up at the end of it. So
he must have been. And you, by the way, I believe, are the first offspring of any astronaut to also go into space.
Yes, although I flew also with the first Russian, so we did it at the same time.
Wow, that's great. So he must have been. I mean, unbelievable. Like that's got to be so cool.
Yeah.
To have your dad there is just incredible.
Exactly right. And what's funny also though is my dad is literally Spock. And,
what do you?
And I mean literally, in the sense of, he is unemotional, simple, logical, unflappable guy, and so he wouldn't become even emotional about me flying or not. I mean, he's literally completely dispassionate.
Look at that.
But I could tell by the time I finished the flight,
right,
that I got the you did well, son.
Wow.
Kind of look, he didn't say it,
right? Sure,
you could just tell.
You could sense it. My goodness,
kind of thing.
I think we actually have a photo of you in the space station. Can we cut to that real quick? This is such a great photo, and I love that somebody had to be upside down. Someone also every weightless thing.
Because which way is down?
Right, exactly. That's true.
If you turn the photo over, it's just as
good.
good.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's so good. And then you also, this is a patch from your mission, which is extremely cool.
Yeah. So it has
that's great. Look at that.
My name, Garriott, on one side, American Mike Fink on the other, our commander Yuri Lonchikov on the top. 100th manned Soyuz launch ever. On the bottom it says Soyuz TMA-13.
Oh my gosh.
And there are 17 stars for the 17 people who have died either going to or
wow.
into space.
Oh my gosh. And then there's you three right there.
Because it's customary to take your commander's call sign.
Oh,
and
cool.
his Air Force call sign was Titan. So we are Titan 1, Titan 2, and Titan 3.
That's great.
Holding up the Earth.
What a great call sign. It's not like, what if his call sign was like Goober? Then you gotta, oh
Goober
man.
1, Goober 2, Goober 3.
A bunch of goobers.
We would have dealt with it.
Yeah. But again, you're space goobers, which is better than any other kind. I don't even know what a goober is. It's like, isn't that the chocolate covered peanut thing? Yeah, it's a peanut or something. Unbelievable. Now, okay, well let's come back to the Earth for a second. So you went down in the water to the Titanic.
Yeah, well, and what's interesting is this is all part of the same journey of space, really.
Yes.
Because the same group of us that formed the X Prize and Zero G and Space Adventures.
Yes.
We also, some of this predates me, the founding of these. Like Mike McDowell, one of our co-founders, he started Quark Expeditions, the first company to take people to the North Pole on icebreakers.
Unbelievable.
We started something called Deep Ocean Expeditions, that charters these mirror submersibles that James Cameron chartered those submarines from Deep Ocean Expeditions to go film the movie Titanic.
Oh my gosh!
Which is why we could go take those same submarines and go down to the Titanic.
That's so cool.
And so, and then we took those same subs down to find some treasure wrecks and go to see hydrothermal vents, these very special...
Wait, let's back up. You went actually treasure hunting in a submarine.
Absolutely.
And how does that work? What do you mean you just went? What are you on Google Maps? How do you know what's?
Well,
how does that
specifically? So the first trip we made, how we found it is one of our partners helped bring up the Liberty Bell 7 space capsule that NASA had lost in the Atlantic.
Wow.
And when they were doing the side scan sonar for that, they saw what is, to any layperson, obviously a wooden ship lying on the bottom of the ocean that no one had known what was. It was uncharted and there was no record of its loss.
Wow, this is crazy.
And so we said, well, let's just take the subs and go check it out. And so
I love that. Hey, let's just go. Pack a sandwich.
That's exactly what we did. And so with that in hand, so to speak, we went down there, and sure enough, there was a ship that was full of coconuts and rum bottles. And so we called it the Pina Colada, was our name for it. But it also had, in the captain's quarters, it had some treasure chests full of gold and silver coins. And
literally what we're doing right now in Gauntlet, you've done in real life.
Exactly, at the bottom of the ocean.
Unbelievable.
At the bottom of the ocean in a submarine.
Unbelievable. That is crazy. And so, and what is it like being, because those subs, I saw the James Cameron thing, it's like, it's very, very tight.
It is, but it's almost the same as a Soyuz, to be honest.
But that's
it's about the same size.
Wow.
There's 3 people in it, just like the Soyuz.
Sure.
And the life support systems is a CO2 scrubber and bleeding in oxygen, like on the Soyuz.
Very similar.
And so, yeah,
except maybe in English this time, maybe not in Russian.
No, still in Russian.
Okay, still in Russian.
Still in Russian. So yeah, the Russians has sort of been a theme to my. It's part of my exploration here.
That's so funny. And was there anything? I mean, like, what's something that would surprise people about being that deep in a submarine?
Well, so despite this submarine being made out of very thick steel,
Yes.
the pressure down at the depth of the Titanic is 70,000 pounds per square inch.
Oh my God.
And that is enough pressure to compress this metal sphere by an amount you can measure with a yardstick. So
oh my
it's,
God.
You are. It is really, 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 really deep. And
talk about like groaning. I mean, that must have been a whole other.
Well, and also, I do a lot of exploration travel activities, and so I pay a great deal of attention to safety, and I learn all the systems. Even if I'm not going to be the sub driver, I want to know how it all works.
Absolutely.
I want to know how all the safety systems work.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. And so before we went down to the Titanic, I went through all the safety systems. So I know how, we have a few days of oxygen, a few days of CO2 scrubbing, plenty of food and water.
And how long are you down in this?
You're down about 12 hours.
Oh, wow. So that's
a long time.
I didn't believe that.
It takes a couple hours just to get to the bottom, a couple hours to get back up, and it's really deep.
That is nuts.
And but what's interesting is, probably one of the biggest dangers you might think of down there is getting stuck. Like maybe you'll get tangled up in some nets or something somebody's dropped.
Right. You cannot have someone else come and help you. It seems.
Right. Well, there's another submarine in theory, but there's not necessarily much they could do even with another submarine. But it's somewhat nice to think that the other submarine could help.
Oh my gosh.
But what's interesting is, if you get entangled, there's light booms you can eject. There's remote manipulators that you can eject.
Light booms? What do you mean?
Lights.
I see.
But big booms with lighting, so that you can light up something you're filming.
Got it.
But you can eject those booms if you get them tangled up.
I see.
Right.
I
So make sure you don't get stuck on the
Disengage,
bottom because something's attached.
Right.
And you can eject your side thrusters, and you can eject the main prop in the back. You've got 2 giant battery trays underneath it you can drop. And if you were to do all that, the little capsule that's left would be incredibly positively buoyant, and a little capsule sphere-like device, so it's going to be very slippery.
Sure.
So you think it's going to be pretty easy to get to the top. Almost anything you can imagine, you'll be able to get out.
And you'll either pull it with you, maybe.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You'll be incredibly buoyant.
Yes.
And even if you can't get up, then there's a door that pops open, and there's a really long rope with a buoy that goes to the surface, so that the other sub could follow it back down and maybe find you.
Wow. Man.
And the radios that are on board are called acoustic phones. They actually make a piezoelectric noise in the water.
So they're actually making waves.
And that's line of sight. So you can't have a mountain between you and the other sub or the people on the surface to hear it. But the ocean's pretty clear, and so that's shouldn't be a problem.
Yes.
Unless you do what we did.
I love this. This is going to be great.
So, we go down to the Titanic. We sit and have lunch on the deck of the Titanic. We go down in the main staircase and look at all the views you saw in the movie Titanic. We saw by eye at the bow and at the place that broken open. And the last spot we go to is the stern to go look at the props. So, to get down there, when the Titanic hit the ground, it kind of dug up a trench a little bit. And so there's sort of a dirt berm behind it.
Okay.
And so as you approach it, you go over the berm, you come down on the side of the berm, and you come over and you look at the props. And you're going like, hey, look, there's the props.
Yeah, sure.
And then when it was time to go, you lift off the ground, and bang, we hit the bottom of the Titanic. And the Titanic is rusting into nothing down there.
Sure.
And so suddenly all this debris goes on top of the submarine.
It's a Titanic avalanche.
Literally.
That's crazy.
Now, remember all those safety measures I described? We've just defeated all of them.
Whoa.
All of them. I don't care how buoyant you are. If the Titanic is sitting on top of you, you're not getting up. There's no buoy you can launch that anybody can see, and the radios don't work because you're out of line of sight to anyone.
Oh my! You're covered in rusting Titanic metal.
Right.
That's great. Were you freaking out?
Well, what's interesting is you realize that at that moment you go like, wow, literally every safety measure that you had this confidence in, like the Titanic itself, has just been defeated. You realize that if the worst has happened, there's really no way you can get out of it. There's literally, even if they could, they won't find you, but even if they did, they couldn't, no one.
What are they going to do?
What are they going to do?
Yeah,
there's nothing they can do. And so all you can do, and now you have visibility is truly zero. No visibility.
This is when we find out you died 30 years ago and you're a ghost. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I'm just talking to myself. Exactly.
But we, you just sit there. You actually wait. We sat there for probably an hour, maybe 2, to wait for the silt in the water to clear to
Okay.
settle out. And then, you have these tiny little portholes you're looking at going like, well, you can't see anything because you're just looking down into the mud. And then all you do is you go like, well, let's try to lift off. Let's, pump a little ballast out and try to try to see if we can lift up. And sure enough, we lift a little off the bottom, and then we turn around in place, kind of skitching along the bottom a little bit, and then we drive forward to that berm and then kind of climb up the mud, to get out. But we had actually broken that first bang broke this titanium bumper set that was around the subs.
Because you were back in the props, which is probably the most reinforced part of
the
Titanic.
And we hit it hard. It's a 25-ton submarine, so any momentum it has is going to hit hard. And so we hit it hard. And I kept actually the bracket that the titanium bumpers are attached to the sub with because it wasn't attaching anything anymore. So I kept that as a memento of my.
So you just picked
collision.
it up with the sub.
No. We actually it was still the cleat was still attached to the sub.
Oh wow! Oh,
so
that's
when we on the surface we removed the cleat, and I kept the cleat.
That is so insane.
And so we did make it out, but that was one of these examples of you just never know when. It's the things you don't think about that are going to get you.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything you plan for, you can probably deal with.
I mean, and the thing too that's so fascinating about that is, so for an hour you kind of sat there, you didn't know what your fate was going to be.
Right, exactly right.
That is that's crazy. I mean, you just what was flashing through your head? I mean, you're very accomplished, but you've got to.
Yeah,
think
well, all of us, all three of us that were on board were like, oh, the irony was not lost on us at all.
Right.
That wow, we have just defeated all of the safety measures, and we chuckled about it. And you're like, you still try the radios, and of course nobody can hear you, and so you go like, oh, that's not unexpected, but kind of unfortunate,
right?
Yes.
How does it work with? So obviously you're ejected from you launch from a ship on the surface to go down, and so is there? Do you say, oh, we're going to be down for X amount of time if we don't come back? Like, like, is there...
No, yeah. So when you're out of radio contact for more than 15 minutes, they assume they want to reach you.
They assume something's bad.
And so they knew, for example, that we were headed down to the stern. So they would have known, generally speaking, where we were because of where we checked in last and what we told them our intentions were.
Yeah.
So you don't just go rove around.
You're like, all right, see
you guys.
See you guys around 3.
See you guys in 12 hours if we make it.
Right, exactly.
So you're trying to be careful.
Yes.
But your stomach rumbles.
Right. Yes.
What happened to Elf needs food?
Yeah, right. Elf needs food. They got Thor.
And
if you guys are just joining us, we're with Richard Garriott. He created the Ultima series. He has been to space. He's been to the bottom of the ocean. He has written an amazing book about all these things called Explore, Create. It's fantastic. It's out now. And of course, and you've got a game coming out this summer.
I still make games.
And you still make games. Yes.
I still make games.
That's right. So let's talk about the new game that's coming out this summer.
The new game is called Shroud of the Avatar. It's basically the spiritual successor to the Ultima series.
Awesome.
Which I haven't really worked in medieval fantasy and kind of specifically these virtue-based games that I did with Ultimas.
Yeah.
For a decade. So I'm sort of getting back to my roots.
That's great. And that's got to be fun. I mean, it's got to be like slipping on an old pair of shoes to a certain extent.
Exactly. And and I sort of purposely didn't do it for the last decade because the first 20 years of my career was sort of it's treading in many ways the same turf. Mm-hmm. But now it's not only have I been away for it long enough, but technology has advanced a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
And whole new waves of gamers have come in who didn't really experience the kind of games that I like to create.
Absolutely.
And so now seemed like the right time to go back and do it.
And what are you excited about with your new? And it's going to be. You said this is only the first installment.
That's correct.
And so it is only the first story.
So with the Ultima series, not only was it some of the first ever role-playing games, and first games that had truly deep stories about virtue as opposed to just level grinding for monsters.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Exactly.
Which is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And,
on the grind.
In my games, you had to prove yourself worthy, not just in might, but in moral compass.
Absolutely, yeah, and virtue.
In virtue, in order to succeed.
Yes.
And so this also fulfills that. Plus, it is both an online and offline game, since I helped kind of develop both of those standards in the past.
A master of all domains.
But what's interesting about this game too is that it's not only both online and offline, it lets the game itself sort of throttles up and down between single player and multiplayer as it needs to or wants to.
Wow, that's pretty
so
cool.
It can do detailed storytelling, in a multiplayer environment. And unlike a lot of MMOs, which people are broken up into different copies of the world. Oops, I got wasted by that guy.
He's tough. He's a jerk for sure.
I am back. Watch out for it.
He's getting, he's got. Oh no!
I
got nailed.
But the new game puts everybody in the same play world versus splitting them up.
That's cool.
Which is, I think, is also an advantage. So there's.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I have to say is one of the trends in games I don't like right now is there's I have the most fun with this couch co-op. I love this.
Yeah.
But I also like playing. Sometimes I like multiplayer. Sometimes I like single player. And it's interesting because when Titanfall came out, I don't know if you remember that game, Giant. There was no single player, and that kind of taught me. Oh wait, I play single player to then learn how to play multiplayer. Like, oh, here are the weapons I like. This is the strategy I like. So that's great. I love the fact. That
and in fact, the reason we started this is because I travel all the time.
Yes.
And if you make a game that can't
not just on this planet, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, a little
interplanetary. Yes, exactly.
And but I want to be able to play when I'm on an airplane or just off grid.
Absolutely.
And so that was sort of one of the founding principles of starting this game is to have it play both online and offline.
Absolutely. And for people, even like our armed forces and stuff, they don't have a lot of play a lot of video games, and they don't get a chance to a lot of times have good, like broadband connections out there in Qatar or wherever. It was funny. We do this series on the show called Clueless Gamer, where Conan and I play video games. And I don't think we have had more fans than when we went with Michelle Obama to this forward air base in Qatar. Everyone there just were like saying lines. All the servicemen and women were saying like lines from the different games, sketches we've done. I mean, it was really cool. So that's awesome. That's fantastic.
No, I agree. I completely agree.
That's very, very exciting. Yeah. Well, what other adventures do you have in store? What other mountains are there to climb?
There's so many more to do.
Maybe Everest. Maybe mountains to climb.
Well, what's interesting is you might think that I do these things that seem dangerous, but I'm actually very practical. One out of every four people that have summited Everest, one person has died attempting to summit Everest.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty dangerous.
Yes, very.
I don't care how I slice it; those are bad odds.
Bad odds. Yes.
And so Everest is not on my must-do list.
No.
But there are things left. Like I have not been to the North Pole yet, and I'm trying to.
Wow.
Oops, get out of there. And so I'm trying to find a way to take my kids to the North Pole.
Wow, that would be great.
And my kids are only 2 and 4 at the moment.
Oh my goodness! And by the way, your kids have the coolest names ever. By the way.
Yeah, well, we had fun with their names.
Yeah,
so
I think Kinga is.
Kinga is our daughter's first name.
Yes.
And her middle name is Shuailong, which is water dragon in Chinese. Because before we knew it was a girl, we knew it was going to be born in the Chinese year of water dragon, so we named her Water Dragon.
Unbelievable. And your full name, by the way, because I think you and your wife.
Yes. I added. Well, I'm a big believer that women changing their last name to meet a man's last name is part of the patriarchal past.
Yes.
That actually works against women's equality.
I love that. Yes.
And so I resist that, and so. Anyway, I endeavored not to have that happen.
Very cool. Very cool. So your last name is actually Garriott
de Caillou.
De Caillou, yes, which is like, man, that is the coolest
name. Because my wife's last name was Pichot de Caillou de Sinapore. Was her last name before we got married. So we actually shortened hers and lengthened mine.
I love that. That is so cool. I've got Bleyaert. I'm stuck with something that sounds like when you dry heave. Bleyaert. It's the worst. Oh, man.
Well, you sort of inherit that first name.
Yeah,
Not that you can't change it if you want to.
That's true. I just got to marry someone with a really cool last name.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it'll be
exactly
amazing.
Or just make up a new one.
Exactly. Well, so Everest is not on your list. What do you think?
Oh, well, other than the North Pole, so the thing we're doing nowadays is visiting disappearing indigenous populations of the Earth before they disappear.
Wow.
And so we actually took the kids when our son was only 6 months old, and our daughter was 2.5. We went to. That didn't work very well. We went into the mountainous regions between Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos.
Wow.
With kids literally on our backs into the jungles.
Wow, that is so cool. That's
And
unbelievable.
so there's tons of that to do.
And how was that? I mean, how were the bugs? How was that experience? Was it?
It wasn't nearly as bad as you think, because we didn't bring a domestic nanny or person with us at all. But what we did is we hired locals. to
Oh,
help
that's
us
so
out.
smart.
So which worked out great.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of added to the cultural experience.
That's very fun. And it's interesting. Like when I went to Belize and we stayed in the jungle a little bit there, and there were no bugs because the bats ate them all.
Yeah.
Which is kind of exciting. Yeah, you kind of when you get out, I think into the world. It's like kind of nature takes care of itself in a certain way.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly right. In certain areas.
In certain areas, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's true. In other areas, it's incredibly dangerous. Wow, that is absolutely unbelievable. And we talked a little bit before. You kind of arranged for Stephen Hawking to how did that come about?
Yeah, and so what was interesting is that was Peter Diamandis' idea, and he just said, look, here's Stephen Hawking, is a person who talks about space, wants to go to space. It's going to be a while before we have any vehicles that could take him to space.
Yeah.
Why don't we take him on a zero-G flight? And by the way, a zero-G flight is not a cheap thing to operate the airplane.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, to take Stephen Hawking on a flight would really require us to do some test flights and other things ahead of time. Mm-hmm. So it was going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost.
Right.
And so what we did is we called up all the board members, including myself and others, and we said, why don't we all share the cost? So let's go with Stephen.
He's the smartest man on the
planet.
planet.
Him
Yes.
to go, and then we get the cool fun of going with Stephen Hawking on a zero-G flight.
Yes.
And we shared that idea with him, and he was like, heck yeah, I'm there.
He's like, I'm good.
And we've actually been great friends ever since. I was just in London at his 75th birthday last month.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
And I walked from literally the house I was born in to his house.
Whoa!
On the day of his 75th birthday.
That is...
And that's, again, why he did the quote for me in the back of the book.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
It all has grown out of us, doing this zero-G flight stuff together.
That's so cool. And how is he as a person? He seems like a pretty cool guy.
He's a shockingly cool guy.
Yeah.
And he is a shockingly glib guy.
Interesting.
And what's interesting about that, though, is that, if you're familiar with how he talks,
yes,
it's very slow and it's very asynchronous.
Yes.
He can't, respond in real time.
Right.
And so what you do is you talk to Steve, and then when he gets a break of about 30 minutes, he will compose a reply.
Wow.
And so there's sort of lag between what you say and how he responds.
Interesting.
But when he does respond, it is always very articulate, very witty.
I believe it.
I just find it just incredible fun to have a conversation with him, just because he's so glib. In fact,
That's so. In a lot of ways,
It's
it's
a
kind
unique
of like talking on a live chat, where it's like there's a delay. You ask a question, then later he kind of responds.
That's right.
That's
and the delay is
cool.
like 30 minutes.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's great, man. I love the fact that he held that the party for time travelers. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Which is just like the cool, and so he's got to have a great sense of humor.
Absolutely.
When somebody does that, which is extremely cool. Oh, let's see, what am I carrying here? What is this thing?
And what I also find some humor in when you I've heard him give presentations and things a number of times, and
yeah.
What's funny is, of course, his knowledge of the universe is great.
Right.
But
yes.
something that is a little tricky is for him to know what people don't know, and so he'll start with something that everybody knows. And you're going like, oh, I'm enjoying this.
Yes.
And then he'll cross over to this oh my God, he's like,
what is he talking
he's
about?
now way over my head, and then he'll go 2 or 3 more levels deep. And you're going like, oh, okay, I'm not worthy. I'm still, I'm a ways behind.
Unbelievable.
In my learning.
Like a Brick says, he heard that Stephen Hawking refuses to upgrade his voice to a less robotic one because he considered the old one his own voice. That's so
true.
Cool.
That's true.
Really cool.
And by the way, tons of people, there's new technology coming out these days that also could help him speak more fluidly, which would be a huge advantage.
Yes.
But the problem is that none of that is quite mature enough yet, and tons of people come to him claiming they have it worked out and would love to have him as a first user.
I'm sure.
But in fact, most of them don't really have it all quite worked out, and it sort of wastes his time. And,
right, exactly, which is very valuable.
Which is, exactly. So, but he does quite well with what he's got.
That's extremely cool. We were on tour with Conan a bunch of years ago, and one of our coworkers spotted him. By the way, best celebrity sighting ever, coming out of this hotel in New York. And I guess people don't realize, but the chair is it's not like just a normal chair. It's like a huge, it's like a giant thing. And he was flanked by supermodels. And I was like, well, that makes me so happy that Stephen Hawking is the man. He should be flanked by supermodels at all times.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I mean, that is just unbelievable cool.
Yeah. And you know, and what's interesting is Stephen is always, you know, not only surrounded by supermodels in the case you were describing, but also just, you know, smart people and interesting people, and you know,
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, there's
women,
no one that doesn't enjoy being seen.
Of course,
with Stephen Hawking.
I mean, unbelievable.
And so, and he's a very open guy. I mean,
he's still very humble and personable, even though he's this.
Completely.
Yeah, that's
you know,
very
the first
cool.
few times I would go to see him, like I've seen him at Cambridge University, and you know, you're sort of intimidated to go, hey, I'm gonna go walk up to his office and knock on the door and see if I can get in. And but you know, his whole staff is also very good about understanding that people want to talk to him, and he wants to talk to other people too. Because
of course,
you know, and he's quite social.
That is unbelievable. And you know, you yourself as well, extremely intimidating. What would you say to people who want to do the things you've done and you know, get into some of the fields and some of the things you've accomplished? Like,
well, what's interesting is, you know, for computer games, I think I was just at the right age at the right time. You know,
yes.
I mean, I've worked hard,
absolutely.
and I think I'm pretty creative and smart, but I also know for a fact that I was well placed to take advantage of it.
Yes, luck as well as
luck,
talent.
but I'm a big believer of, you know, luck is the intersection between opportunity and preparation. And
I love that.
And opportunities will happen all the time.
Yes.
I think almost every day, every person has a moment or two where they could advance their either current career or make headways towards something new if they were paying attention,
right,
and chose to take that risk and chose to put in that effort. Then some fraction of those times it'll work to make an incremental, you know, improvement.
Yeah.
And so, like, getting myself to space was something I knew was going to be hard. I had no illusions that would be a difficult journey.
Yes.
But I thought, you know, there's no real reason it shouldn't work. There's no foundational. It's not impossible. If I said I want to build a light speed, you know, a faster than light vehicle, I'm going, well, you know, I cannot conceive of a way to do that.
Yes.
But at least for space, I'm going, I can conceive of it.
Right. People have done it.
People have done it. The technology exists.
Yes.
You know, it has a cost. You know, we can measure it.
Yep.
You know, and in particular with going to the Russians, the reason why we knew that would work is we saw them doing things like trading tanks for a guy going to space for some third world country.
Sure.
And we're going, well, that means the flight is worth 5 tanks. And we calculate 5 tanks, that's $20 million. So it's got to be $20 million. And you can watch a few transactions.
Google currency converter, yes.
Tanks to rubles.
Rubles.
Tanks to rubles. And so that's why we said, you know, we know this will work.
Yes.
And so their first response to some yahoos calling them is like, forget it.
Right.
But then you go, okay, why? And you go like, well, their answer to that was because to even calculate a price and see how we would train you and see if NASA would accept us or how we'd fly these civilians, that would cost us money to determine that answer.
Yes.
And we said, well, that's a qualified yes.
Yes.
So
and it's
how much would it cost
yes.
to do that work?
Absolutely.
And the answer to that was $300,000. And I was like, I'm in. Here's $300,000
and 2 tanks.
And after they spent my $300,000, they came back and said $20 million. Exactly what we thought.
Right.
And sadly for me, that was also in the year 2000 with the internet stock market crash.
.com bubble, yes.
And so that first seat, which was my seat, I couldn't pay for.
Right.
And we instead had to give it to a guy named Dennis Tito, who became the first private citizen to go.
Yes.
Who, like me, had also been pursuing this his whole life.
Right.
And so, you know, more power to him.
Right.
But
you still made it.
But I still made it. I had to circle back and build more companies, sell more companies.
Yes, it was not wasted work at all in any way. But that's so cool. And so I guess kind of like being self-aware and not taking no for an answer.
Don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And if it fails, if you fail at something, and you know why it failed, and you can go, wow, I've learned through this, and even though today I may not be prepared, or I don't have the money, or I don't have the team, or whatever the reasons are you can't proceed, if you believe you can strategize about how you could at least go a little farther next time, then start working towards it again.
Yes.
If that's something you really want to do, like go to space.
Yes.
And so you know, I'm a very patient person. Like I'm working on one of my latest little side projects is personal rapid transit, an automated people mover to move people around in cities off the roadway, which in addition to self-driving cars, I think is going to be frankly needed.
Absolutely.
And but it requires public property, private property, city, state, local governments, all to agree.
Right.
And a lot of money. And so
That's true.
And so I know it's going to be a long-term project, but I've already been working on it a decade, and maybe it'll take 20 more years. But
Yeah.
whatever it takes, I'm going to help make sure it gets through.
I'm telling you, we were in Mexico City last week, and that is a city that absolutely needs some
Something.
prison. Wow,
Get it off
because
the-
woof.
Yeah.
Mexico City, I love you, but your traffic is worse than LA, and I mean that in all the ways possible. It's crazy.
LA's pretty bad, by the way.
LA
Every
is
time I
bad.
come out here, that's the one thing I think about is they're like,
It's bad.
getting around in the city is just
I'd rather
the
be in a
worst.
tiny
Yeah, I'd rather be in a
space capsule.
Soyuz.
Yes, exactly.
Any day of the week.
Well, Richard Garriott, thank you so much.
Absolutely,
The
thank
book
you.
is Explore, Create. It's absolutely fantastic. Go pick it up now. And of course, Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues comes out this summer.
Indeed.
The first installment, and many more to come. So check that out. And thank you guys for joining us for Stream Coco. We will see you guys next week. See you later. Bye.